Welcome to another episode of Empowered Consulting's Social Justice podcast series. This podcast was created on behalf of the Social Justice Committee to educate and raise awareness on different topics within social impact and education. We're your hosts for this episode. I'm Nikki, and I'm a senior at NYU.
And I'm Mira, and I'm senior at NYU as well. We'd like to introduce our guest for this episode, Ferni Cruz from Breakthrough New York. So Breakthrough New York is a education nonprofit that works with high potential students from low-income backgrounds and provides them with tutoring services, mental health support, financial planning services, and college counseling services. Because of her experience working with primarily high school upperclassmen, we are excited to welcome Ferni and learn more about how she helps students navigate their post-graduation plans.
So, Ferni, thank you so much for appearing on this episode. We would appreciate it if you could introduce yourself to our audience a little bit and talk about how you became involved in Breakthrough New York.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm Ferni Cruz. I'm the college placement manager at BTNY. Essentially, my role can sort of be summarized as being a mentor as well as an advisor for students in both 11th and 12th grade. This year, I had the pleasure of working with the 12th grade cohort, 12th grade students in high school. So we were navigating the college application process. And, it was a whirlwind of a year, but my journey at BTNY actually started at this point almost 3 years ago. And I transitioned into nonprofit work, specifically into work within a community-based organization like Breakthrough New York, after I was working in admissions for almost 2 years. So college admissions, I worked at my alma mater and, had some experience reading applications, making decisions on who to admit to the school. So that was a really fun role. I learned a lot and I definitely saw myself grow in those 2 years, but I wasn't working with the students and the communities that I myself am a part of, those being first generation to college, students from, low income communities, students with immigrant families. So I decided to transition over to nonprofit after 2 years at my previous job because I wanted to actually have that one-on-one interaction and those conversations with students, who had similar experiences to my own. And so that's kind of where I landed, right? I met Breakthrough, actually, funny enough, because I gave an information session while I worked in admissions to a few of the students at BTNY at the time, a few of whom are actually my current students. So it's sort of a full circle moment this year where, I met them back then when they were sophomores, and now I'm seeing them off to college as rising first years. So yeah, my passions are in, creating community spaces and empowering and uplifting voices that are marginalized in pretty much all of society. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thanks for that introduction. So we know that you play the role of a college placement manager for BTNY. What does a day in a life look like for you?
Honestly, it varies, I think, by the time of year. Summertime is sort of when we're winding down a little bit, but there's still some preparation in terms of making sure our next class of seniors feels ready to go for the college application process. So, I mentioned earlier to you both that we're having a college application boot camp again this summer for our rising senior class. And, every day is a different day. Oftentimes I do a lot of data analysis and entry, a ton of outreach to students and their families just to make sure that we are staying updated with them. And then, of course, supporting with college applications, whether that means reviewing essays or talking through questions about financial aid or even working on financial aid applications with students. Like, I sort of have a hand in all of that. But of course, every student requires a different level of support. So it's important that I stay in touch with students just to ensure that I'm meeting their needs or at least guiding them in a way that they can access a resource that will meet their needs, right, in the way that they require. So every day is different. Some days are slower than others. Some days are insanely busy and I can't find the time to do everything, but it certainly is an interesting job and not, no one day looks the same as the next. So I appreciate that about the work, and especially being able to connect one-on-one with students who are fantastic is why I still do it. Right.
Right. And you mentioned, that you work with a lot of first-gen students, students in marginalized communities. And of course, the college application process can be very, very intimidating if you're not super familiar with it. So for these kind of groups, what would you say the most challenging aspects of navigating college applications are?
Yeah, I think that there are different layers, right, to the college application process and the obstacles that it presents for the communities of students that we work with. I would definitely say that, I mean, I think everyone that I work with, students, families, and staff, would all agree that financial aid is a beast to navigate, right? Just knowing what applications to send in, knowing which documents to submit to schools. And then once students get decisions, when they get their financial aid awards, being able to read and evaluate and essentially assess whether or not a school is financially feasible for them and their families, that has been tricky this year. I think that the pandemic has certainly brought up a lot more obstacles than previous years. But I think it's also shed light on, at least to me, perhaps which schools are being more supportive of our students in terms of providing the aid that they need than those that are not. Right. So financially, it's the big one that I would definitely highlight there. And I mean, I went through that process myself, and it was super stressful back when I was in high school. Believe it or not, it has not changed much since then. So yeah, those are always conversations that we've got to have with students and their families alike.
Right. And, you did kind of touch upon being a little bit selective with finding schools that are financial aid friendly. But in terms of maybe types of community matching or looking for resources, do you kind of help the students narrow down the kind of colleges they want to apply to?
Yeah, it's interesting because Breakthrough is, in many ways, we're a third party support for students, given that all of our students go to different high schools, right? So we're not like working from a high school. So that can make it a little bit more challenging to, say, get a hold of a student. But when it comes to the actual, fit being not just financial, but academic as well as social, those can certainly be actually trickier sometimes than financially because there's not one sort of way to go about things, if that makes sense, right? Like there's not one route one could take to find out what college life is like on campus X versus on campus Y, right? So what I do is we have college access mentors. So those are college age students who are currently going to schools, right, in New York City or close by, and actually work directly with our students during their college application process. And we also have high school mentors. So every grade has them, but they can provide their own perspective. And I encourage my college access mentors, my CAMs, to share their stories, their experiences. We are very intentional about who serves as a mentor. So we want to see folks that reflect our own community, whether it's, Black, Latinx, Asian American college students, or students who are first gen to college, et cetera. So that's one resource. And then there are also organizations that we are partnering with and have partnered with that actually do make those connections happen between high school and college students, right? But it can certainly be tricky to do that research because it is very qualitative, and oftentimes you kind of just need to do more work finding the source than you would, say, looking for a financial aid application online. So we use our mentors, we use other partner organizations, we also have Breakthrough college students, right? So we have 3 programs: middle school, high school, and college. And so the college students also serve as resources just in terms of like connecting with the high school students and like sharing their own insights.